Hello gin lovers and welcome back to No Nonsense Gin Reviews with me, Bobby Freeman. Now then, today we're going to be reviewing no gins at all. That's right, because it's a little bit of a different video today because one of my subscribers, Connor Boyle, has got in touch and he is very new to gin and he asked if I do a video explaining a little bit about the origins of gin, where it came from and how it came to be how we know it today. So Connor, here is your video. So a lot of people assume that gin originated in London. It's not quite right. It did certainly gain a lot of popularity in London, but before that it actually came from Holland, and it was called, but it wasn't called gin, it was called Geneva, and it was basically like a liqueur. It would be a much cruder version than anything you can get today. And it was actually made by distilling malt wine to an ABV of 50%, which back then in the 17th century was pretty goddamn strong. So it was very popular. However, it did have one tiny flaw in that it tasted like shit. It tasted awful and no one really liked it. So what they did was they put a load of botanicals in there, i.e. juniper berries, fruits, spices, basically anything they could lay their hands on that would mask the unpleasant taste. And it was originally brought over to England by a guy called William of Orange, who became King of England. But that's another story. So over in Holland originally, the reason they would drink it was because in those days, in like sort of the Middle Ages, in Europe, as most places in the world at that time, we loved a battle. We Europeans, we love to have a battle. We were not happy unless we were, hacking each other to bits with a sword. So, unfortunately, these battles were pretty goddamn scary. There's a high chance you get killed or you're something chopped off. So they weren't all that keen on going into battle all the time. Not all of them anyway. So what they decided to do was, what did they do, the Dutch? What did they do? Did they have a bit of a smoke? No, they didn't. That's a racist stereotype. Stop laughing. What they did, they had a bit of a drink. So they would drink this Geneva because, well, basically, it would calm them down a little bit. It says they found it very calming. Really, it just got them a bit drunk, got them a little bit more confident and a bit leery, and they wanted to fight. So basically, these battles that were conducted in those days were basically just big drunken brawls. Everyone was completely wasted, just hacking each other to death. It was horrendous, really. But yeah, that's where it originated. So they would obviously they were scared to go into battle, so they drink this Geneva, and hence the expression Dutch courage. That's where it came from, because it made them a little bit more confident to go into battle. So, as I say, it was then brought over to England by William of Orange, who then later became King of England, and he basically thought to himself, I think these British people will like that, and he was right. We did like it, but to start off, we didn't drink it as something to enjoy. It was actually a medicine. People would have it to cure all sorts of ailments, so it was like the wonder drug of the time. So people would have gin and they have it to cure things such as everything from kidney problems to gallstones to gout. Whatever you had, it was pretty much treated by either leeches or gin, or the combination of the two. So it would basically be like going to the doctor today and say, oh doctor, I'm having terrible trouble with my kidneys. Absolutely killing me. There's definitely something wrong. Okay, yep, not a problem. Here we go. Bottle of Beefeater. Have a bottle of that before breakfast, one before bed. You'll be right as rain in 2 weeks. Can you imagine? It must have been amazing. By the way, at this point, the British had shortened the original name Geneva, which the Dutch had given it, down to just gin. So I don't know whether they just thought to themselves, we haven't got time to be messing about with 3 syllables. It's ridiculous. These Dutch don't know what they're doing. Gin, much better, time saving, brilliant. And then it's just stuck, and then it's been known as gin ever since, and is still gin to this day. So after a while, obviously, people were being prescribed this gin all the time, and they began to think to themselves, you know what? This stuff's all right, it's getting us absolutely wasted. So they started to have it when they weren't ill, and they really started to enjoy it. And it took off big time. The Londoners, we loved the gin. In fact, we loved it a little bit too much because particularly amongst the lower classes, because there was a very big class divide back then, and the lower classes were extremely poor, and gin was very cheap. In fact, it was cheaper than beer. So beer was like the drink of the opulent, sort of wealthy higher classes, and the people sort of living way down in the lower classes, they were just getting on this gin because it was dirt cheap, but they got completely it got out of control, and it actually led to something called the gin craze, which was around the year 1700. It lasted for about 40, 50 years. People were just drinking, they weren't just drinking it on Saturday and Friday night. They were getting on it like Tuesday morning, Wednesday lunchtime, every single day of the week. They were just on the gin. People would just lay about drunk everywhere. There was probably vomit sloshing around the streets. Mind you, in those days, I think that's probably the least bad thing that was sloshing around the streets. But they got in a terrible state, and it was really bad. It was a big problem. It was a big social problem. So they had to think of something to do. There was actually areas that were known as gin districts that you wouldn't go down. You'd be going, no, darling, don't go down there. It's a gin district. We'll get mugged and beaten, and they'll take all of our money. So they were scared to go into it. It was like sort of the equivalent of like an area that would be prevalent and sort of full of Class A drugs or something. It's really, really scary for the people at the time. So they had to think of some way to address this. So what did the government do? How do they solve things? That's right, they taxed it. They taxed gin very, very heavily, which made it very expensive, which means less people could buy it. So what happened? It drove it underground. Gin, as I say, became even more like a Class A drug. So people couldn't get it, didn't want to buy it in the legitimate places because it was way too expensive because of the tax. So what pubs did, they would create like, because say you've got a pub on a corner, so you've got your pub, your front of your pub's here, your main road is there, round the corner, around the dark alley, they would install like and this was a different sort of gin by this point, by the way, they would install a plaque with either a picture of a black cat or a black cat's paw. And the gin that they would use by this point is a little bit more refined. It was called Old Tom, okay? Hence the Tomcat plaque, right? And it was a lot sweeter and a lot softer and a lot more pleasant to drink than the other stuff. Because the other stuff, the original stuff, it wasn't uncommon to have it distilled with turpentine or sulfuric acid. You'll be very lucky to see, can we get any sulfuric acid in a beefeater? No, nothing at all. So this Old Tom was much more pleasant and much more enjoyable. So in fact, they've actually, here we go, I've actually reviewed, oh careful, don't want to drop one. This is Hayman's Old Toms. This is obviously a modern day company, but they actually produce an original Old Tom recipe. It's really interesting to try. As you say, it's a lot sweeter than the London Dry we're used to. And so people would go sort of down this dark alley at the side of the pub, and there would be a plaque with the cat on, a little tiny hole, and then a slot. So you would pop a coin in the slot, and the barman would see it come through the wall, see the coin come through, drop into his little bowl he's got there. So he would then pour, make sure no one's looking, pour a bit of this Old Tom gin into the spout, and you would hold your glass, or even your mouth maybe, against the hole, and you get a shot of gin. So that's how people would get gin in those days. So this continued for a while and people were drinking that, but then sometime later, gin changed, the recipe changed, and we got the London Dry gin. And this is in about 1830 now. And it was a more sort of refined, considered a more sort of a classy drink. And as the name suggests, it was a lot drier than the Old Tom and a lot less sweeter. But this was particularly, people thought it was pretty suave and debonair, and they liked this. And it was very popular until it took the gin company, the gin industry took a real big blow in World War I, because the grains that were used to make the spirits, all spirits in fact, were prioritised and taken to the farms and given to feed the cattle, because obviously we had to try and grow our own food because there was obviously no imports at that point. So any grain was sent to the farms to feed any sort of livestock to keep the country going, to keep us sustainable. So it just shut down. The gin company just shut down, and that no one was getting any gin. So obviously that was a huge hit to the industry. Then the World War I ended in 1918, and it started to get back on its feet again. You start to get distilleries, primarily in London. You had Beefeater, you had Gordon's, they were all there, and it was starting to get going again. Then what happened? World War II in 1939. So what happened then? I don't think there was as much of a problem with the grain this time. The bigger problem this time was the bombs. London got absolutely hammered, obviously, during the Second World War, and all the distilleries were just flattened, completely flattened. So that, again, the industry took a massive hit, literally a gigantic, big, flaming hit. So after the war, then it started to get back on its feet again, and it became it didn't get to the popularity, it certainly didn't get to another gin craze, but it became quite a popular drink. But it was mainly considered probably an old lady's drink, and it carried on right through to the 20th century, and certainly when I was young, gin was definitely something that my gran would drink, for example. Then in 2013, something happened, something strange happened, and gin enjoyed a huge resurgence. It just suddenly became super popular again, and it became fashionable and trendy. And now, as you know, the reason you're watching this program, everyone seems to be drinking gin. There's gin bars all over the place. There's distilleries popping up left, right, and centre. There's around about 3,000 gins now available worldwide in various parts of the world. A lot of them in this country, but yeah, around about 3,000 gins, and it's just become huge and popular. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, even bald blokes are even making videos about it on YouTube now. It's extraordinary. It's unbelievable. And that is how we've come to the situation where we are today, when where gin is such a popular drink. And I thank goodness it is, because I absolutely love it. So guys, that is a history of gin. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. I hope it's not been too much like a boring history lesson, but I think it's important to know the history and the origins of something that you enjoy so much. And I certainly do enjoy the gin, and I imagine you do too if you're watching this video. I've reviewed every single one of these gins you see here, so feel free to have a look at any of my other videos. And don't forget to, as they say in America, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and the like button and any other button you wish to press. And I will see you all next time in the next video. So my name is Bobby Freeman. This is No Nonsense Gin Reviews, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.